So speaking of the customer, tell me a little bit about RealTime Robotics, who you're selling to, who is the customer, what is the expectation, how is RealTime Robotics solving the problem that they may have?
So RealTime Robotics was quite fascinating because it has an incredible robotics motion engine. That sounds fancy, but what's that do for me? And this was indeed the question. We struggled quite a bit with product market fit because there was people trying to do stuff with motion. We're like, do we sell to startups who are trying to do something new, or do we sell and it's this real-time control? I mean, the company was named RealTime Robotics because it was so fast that you could just run it before, like, the robot needs to be there. Boom, 50 milliseconds, we know how to go.
Hello, and welcome to the Shift Change podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Moore, and today I am talking to Ville Lehtonen from RealTime Robotics. Ville, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad to have you on today. As you know, your world sits right at the kind of intersection of product and marketing and operations. So I'd love to know how you ended up in this space. Was robotics always the plan, or how did you end up here?
Kind of and kind of not. So my background is in software originally, but and the first thing I did, I grew up in Finland, so I got my degree there. I popped out in 2005. Headquarters basically surrounded my university. This was like their highest heyday. So I went into telecoms to begin with. So that was pretty pure software. But then I went to get my MBA. By the time I was coming out of their App Store was roaring hot. And I was kind of looking at it and I was really not sure. Like, everyone's making new games. Like, everyone's just this like, wow, did you hear this story? This guy made 50 million just making this one game that went viral for 10 seconds. Like these were all pretty new concepts at the time. And I'm like, that seems like some talent and a lot of luck to me. And I'm not sure also if you're making the world better at all. Any of this, like being the hot game of the year for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, you could retire off that maybe if you got lucky, but like this is closer to lottery in my mind. And no judgment. People do it, and I had friends who did it, but I was like, I want to do something more concrete. And when I came out, there are people who there at the university who had a big robotic idea that won the entrepreneurial idea competition at the university. And I was like, let's go, let's do this. And that's sort of how I got into robots. And it always felt more concrete. My family has been in construction. My father and grandfather both were in construction. So I was like, building something real seems like a very nice thing. And the robots fit that really well. So that got me into robotics, but I had also, before I got to business school, and part of the reason why I went to business school was there was a real big crisis at the telecoms company. I solved it. And then I kind of created these visualizations that helped understand what's going on. And they put me in front of a CTO of a $45 billion company at age 25. I think just because they were like, they're not going to kill this kid, right? He was really mad. And I think I was basically there to, like, as a human shield.
Yeah.
To the CEO. But I showed him what I had done. And he was like, well, this is way better than the Ericsson tool we were using. Like, I want to see this visualization. The company bought on the spot the thing I had coded over the weekend for 2 million euros.
Wow.
I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I got a 5,000 euro bonus.
That's amazing. Well,
I don't know if the 5,000 euros was that amazing.
I'm assuming at that age that's pretty great. I mean, but yeah, in comparison.
We sold it
awesome.
I think we sold it to 4 other customers too. So like,
yeah,
it was 10 million and I made 5,000.
Yeah.
Sounds like, I don't know if I like this. And also I got into a couple of projects where I poured my soul and we solved the problem. And it turned out that no one actually cared.
Yeah.
So I got pretty burned. I'm like, I want to be on the Y side of the equation. I also want to be on the side of the equation that gets a little bit more than 0.05% of the upside.
Yeah.
So that kind of led me into product marketing as a technical guy. I'm like, I don't want to waste time just working like a lunatic. for someone who just picked the wrong problem to solve.
Yeah. How did your product lens evolve over time as you kind of made the switch?
So one thing I discovered, I had pretty good instincts for it, and then I founded my own company, and I turned out that instincts aren't enough because
Mhm.
there's a big luck element to it too. Partially, it's a timing question. Like you need to understand the ecosystem. Like, is the ecosystem ready for your product? And I not being all that commercial, there was some clear naivete to me. One was that, and this is such a stupid thing, but people always fall for this. I thought there was such a thing as a company, and this sounds weird where it's like, of course there's a company. And I'm like, yes, but from a buying perspective, there is no such thing as a company. So the product we made was fantastic. It created value. It helped everyone a lot. If it was a Christmas present, it would have been number 4 on everyone's list. This is not a good marketing strategy. It is a great deal better to be number 1 and everyone else hates you, but one group thinks you're number 1.
Yeah.
So that we kind of muddled through that, but that was one of those where like, oops, I got burned pretty hard by that because I took
Mhm.
3 years of dilution from 2 distinct rounds because that was a terrible, foolish mistake to do is that everyone said, I wish someone would put in the budget for this. And I'm like, how about you? It's like, I mean, how are the things I need? You're like, oh boy. So that was a pretty good sort of evolutionary lesson of like sales is really, really hard. Engineers seldom appreciate this enough,
Mhm.
especially if it's a new product. Like people just don't randomly buy stuff they hadn't seen. It creates so many headaches and something like changing your internal processes. Like I can put a value to that is like, well, a bigger company or even our company, if we have to change a major process, I would put a tag of like everyone involved. Okay, 250,000. So if you're like, hey, I'll sell you this thing for 100,000 that will save you 50,000, I'm like, dude, no, it will lose me 200,000.
Mhm.
You have to run those numbers through very carefully and you can't be, and sometimes tech can be very arrogant about this, is it's like, yeah, but the process you'd have to change is a really stupid process. That may well be true. In fact, it probably is, but it's also incredibly relevant because it's there and it works enough that this company is making revenue. You're not, right?
Mhm.
Don't get too high and mighty. Don't expect them to change for you. Like you're not that special. And that can be quite hard and it's quite frustrating when you're like, oh my God, this customers really don't have any idea what they're doing. Okay. You can educate them and try to, but it's going to be a hard slog. So this sort of increasing sympathy for the customer, which again sounds really simple, but sometimes it's the simple things that are just really hard to truly believe. Like in that first company of mine, we were building robots at this contract manufacturer, and our chairman was 70 at the time, one of our lead investors, and he was like, "You have to go to the factory, and you'll spend 2 months there making sure they're on." I'm like, okay, so yeah, of course, I need to make sure that the process is okay. And he said it like 5 times, and I'm like, I think this man has dementia. And we went to the factory for about 2 weeks, and they seemed to know everything, and we came back. And then it went all to hell in a handbasket. I'm like, no, he didn't have dementia. He just realized how thick my skull was, and it still didn't come through because I kind of underappreciated his point. And it's just like something's going to go wrong. I know it because I've been through this like 10 times. And I'm like, well, we checked everything and everything looks great. How would anything go wrong? And it did. And the same thing is like, just you have to walk quite a few miles in your customers' boots
Mhm.
without judging them. Even if you are, in fact, 50 IQ higher than them, that doesn't matter in the least. To understand what actually benefits them. And by this, I again can't stress enough, it's not a company. It's the person who you're
Yeah.
expecting to champion your sale. What's it doing for them?
So speaking of the customer, tell me a little bit about real-time robotics, who you're selling to, what is the who is the customer, what is the expectation, how is real-time robotics solving the problem that they may have?
So, real time robotics was quite fascinating because it has an incredible robotics motion engine. That sounds fancy, but what's that do for me? And this was indeed the question. Like it struggled quite a bit, or we struggled quite a bit with product market fit because there was people trying to do stuff with motion where like, do we sell to startups who are trying to do something new, or do we sell and it's this real-time control? I mean, the company was named Real-Time Robotics because it was so fast that you could just run it before like the robot needs to be there. Boom, 50 milliseconds, we know how to go. You can go there. And we actually went very far along with some car companies with this real-time control on the factory floor. The R&D loved us. We got millions in sort of project money for it. We forgot to talk to one group of people who run the factories. They're like, what happens if you go bankrupt? What happens if you upload a bug and it collides some robots? And we're like, oh, don't worry, that's not going to happen. People who run manufacturing facilities, those are kind of jobs where you don't usually get, like, it's kind of like IT.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you get praise, you get this much praise. If you get yelled at, you're like, you really get yelled at. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I will be the fifth factory that adopts it. I want to see 4 factories run it for a year before me. Said every single factory.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good, right?
Yeah. So how do you get in the door?
So you kind of look at like, well, how do they program them today, really? So we kind of stepped back and we're like, and also there was this problem is that while we were really fast, we were kind of human quality motions because we were in such an enormous hurry. So 50 milliseconds, like doing something that a human might take 30 hours to do in 50 milliseconds, amazing. But it's no better than what the human could do. So we were like, what if we just put this in the cloud instead and help the people who were doing the programming? Okay. So now instead of spending hours on this, they could just press a button and solve the whole thing. That sounded much better. And now you could go to the people who are programming them and say, hey, how could we do this? And they were testing it and they're like, yeah, this is pretty incredible. But that creates another problem. Those are outsourced operations to people who do the robot programming. But at the end of the day, those companies are essentially consultancies saying like, hey, remember the thing that, you could do in 30 hours? We can do in 2 minutes. Is this good news? It's one of those like McKinsey hears about ChatGPT where like the first thought is like, wow, this is super cool. Second thought is, wow, I won't need that many analysts. Thought 3 is, oh shit.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're like, this went from good to awesome to actually existentially terrifying
Yeah.
in very short order. So we have this whole now we have customers who kind of like us, but who on the very high level are quite concerned about us existing. So we ended up realizing, hey, we need to go to the people who benefit from this. It's the plant that really benefits now. And now the risk isn't there. Like the motions are falling out basically like they would from the humans, which means that the factory directors' concerns are gone because they're like, well, we can go back to the old process if this Boston startup dies on us or something, like we're fine. Nothing ventured, nothing, like no loss. Now this is interesting, but we had to go to the exact car company and say, hey, here's the benefits. And the benefits are actually really different. They all accumulate on you ultimately. We don't really care. Do you want to do more and be more flexible? Like instead of using thousands of hours in consultancy, we just drop that and save the money. Or you can say, actually, we kind of hate how inflexible a modern factory is because they really are. Because what happens is that those are in a line, right? In a big factory, you might have 1,000 robot cells in a sort of fishbone arrangement, like there's a central line. And if you do something that changes the first one, the cascade goes through the whole thing. This is expensive. This is time consuming. Like do that in a bad case, it's like 6 months of work by a whole host of people costing tens of millions, and then a 3 to 4 week downtime to get the factory upgraded. Doesn't sound like a good time at all. But now we're offering an option where it's like, what if it was, took 2 weeks to program and cost a couple of $100,000, maybe $1 million tops, and you could push it in with only a couple days of disruption. That's interesting. We're not commenting. You can pick either of these. You can take the savings or you can speed yourself up because you can now use the integrators. And this was a way for us to try and be nicer to the integrators. It's like, look, if you're, sorry, we reduced 90% of your work, but you get 10 times more projects. So we good? Maybe we're good. And this sort of started biting where they're like, ooh, okay. And it's different parts of the market we think have a different appetite to it because robotics is really expensive. There's 273,000 factories in the United States, vast majority of which do not have robots, unless you're super generous and count like a 3D printer as a robot.
Yeah, that's surprising.
It's not when you think of the economics, really. The problem is that I saw this many, many times in logistics because a lot of people wanted to do palletizing, right? Super simple thing. Well, okay, you need to talk with one of these robotics integrators. All right. First of all, I don't know how to talk to a robotics integrator, so I'm going to hire someone to talk with a robotics integrator. So they need some sort of automation engineer. Let's say they were 2 years of Amazon robotics. I don't need a master of this stuff, but I need someone. Person is still 150 grand kind of minimum, even in, regardless of where you live. High cost of living area, good luck, it's going to be a lot more than that. but let's say
Mhm.
150. Then you get the integrator to come install this robot, 250 to 300,000, depending where you are. The robot might be 35,000. So you're looking at it like, oh, $35,000 robot to do $50,000 worth of work is like not even close to ROI, right? It
Yeah.
needs to carry that first automation dude by itself. So there's your, okay, let's say I have room to buy 5 of the robots. I'm pretty big now already. Okay, you still have a $30,000 carry from that one automation engineer. And then you have to deprecate the 250. So let's say you have a 5-year lifespan. This is kind of simplistic and short, but the $250,000 project is also now $50,000 a year. So you have 30,000 from the guy, 50,000. You need to make 80,000 in profits
Yeah.
just to over 5 years just to break even. So the economics are horrible, and they're kind of like, this is, we've talked with robot makers who said it doesn't matter. We could give the robots away for free. Like, that's not the problem. And that's assuming you have 0 reprogrammings, by the way. If I need to change, if I'm high mix, low volume, let's say I bring someone in once a month. So I'm not that high mix. I'm slightly high mix. I will probably pay, I'm going to be really nice, $2,500. That's maybe too nice, but $2,500 per reprogramming. Well, great. That is another $30,000. So now I need to make $110,000 of profit with this robot to have a prayer of breaking even. And now I'm pretty luxurious. I have and let's say 110,000. Let's say I run the factory 40 hours a week. Or 2,000 or something. I am now paying, I need them to make me $50, like an hour. Like, this is problematic. This math just doesn't really math. And that's one of the interesting
Mhm.
parts about our ability to program the robots really cheaply, is that if we can get the integrator out, and if we can get you not to need the automation engineer, suddenly this.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, how do you reduce the deployment cost? If the programming is not that expensive and it's all the human component, how do you reduce that cost?
It needs some parts that we are not making, which is you need a good user interface, because one of the problems is, like, I'm building something and I need it to the robot to do 1, 2, 3, 4,
Mhm.
5. There's this whole tool chain, parts of which are crazy expensive. So if you want to have today one of the simulation tools where you program robots, want to get, do you know how much the market leader costs? Has
Mm.
the Siemens product called Process Simulate, 55,000 a year. And there are very few people who are proficient. Go to LinkedIn and look for proficiency in Process Simulate. You get like 400 hits in this whole country. It's a rare skill set, and most people don't want to train tons of people for it because, again, $55,000 per seat.
Yeah.
But even the cheaper ones are 10, 15,000 very quickly. So
Mhm.
the skill set is rare. The big companies kind of dominated already. So,
Mhm.
you can't really hire them easily either, because Tesla and Ford and Toyota Kentucky and
Mhm.
all these people want them already. So it can be quite tricky to get any of that to work. But what you need is a tool where a normal human being, and you could be CAD proficient, right? So the sim tools are rare, but there are a lot of people who know how to use CAD. Without a doubt, millions of people in the United States have used a CAD program or an equivalent, because I would say like an Unreal Engine. But many of Photoshop's, like Adobe family of products, you also learn these things. If you could make it so that from one of those tools, you could bridge the data to our cloud, for example,
Mhm.
suddenly there's none of the need to have those people in the chain. Yeah, someone needs to bolt it to the floor, but if
Yeah.
the programming is not really a problem, you can get pretty normal people to do that. And suddenly it's probably more like 20,000 than it is 250,000.
Mhm.
That is very interesting, because our economy basically did this K-shaped manufacturing
Mhm.
split, particularly after China joined WTO, because you had 2 options. Either you had such great crazy margins that you didn't really care that it cost more to make in the US, which is basically just luxury products, you know, stuff for the 1%. Or you had such scale that, like, yeah, I'm going to put in 3,000 robots here. I don't mind the automation engineers because I get to dilute them over this sea of robotics. And by the way, I'm running 3 shifts, which is wonderful for robot value
Mhm.
because they last forever now. They're like 60,000 hours of lifetime.
Yeah.
So the robot price itself is kind of laughable. You get something for 30,000 that has mean time to
Yeah.
failure is 60,000.
Mhm.
Robot costs 50 cents an hour.
Yeah.
So you're like, how come they aren't everywhere? It's because of this
Yeah.
programming side problem.
Yeah.
And that's really what prevented, like, so you have these people who just went vanished into luxury land and, in Italy specializing in 250-foot and taller yachts for luxury people. Like, fine, whatever, you get to set your price there. Or in Austin, building 10,000 square foot homes, sure, manufactured in America with chandeliers to match.
Mm.
Or you had enormous scale, which is essentially automotive, very, very few other things by this point, maybe some HVAC systems, but almost all of that ended up in China too, because it's just not complex enough. And the last group is basically we didn't quite outsource our weapons manufacturing to China, but I mean, kind of surprised we didn't, to be honest. We got that enthusiastic for a while. But everyone else went to China because there was just no way to work there. You were competing purely in salaries because you couldn't roboticize it because robotics was even more expensive than people. And I have sort of idealistic hopes that this wave, like, we are deterministic, by the way. We use AI, but our core is not AI, which means that AI building on top of us is cool because we can validate that the AI did not hallucinate. Like, we
Mhm.
can be a layer of truth. And combined with some of the new AI stuff that's coming along and us underneath it, making sure that, like, if you ask, like, well, what are the odds we collide? Like, how many nines? And I'm like, I don't understand the question. Like, it's like, how many nines is there that the CPU gets 2 plus 2 correct? Is like, there are no nines. There's one letter one and then a whole load of zeros, however many you want. That could be really interesting because it allowed medium manufacturing to return to the United States. So you wouldn't need to be like, well, if you have 10,000 employees, then we can use robots. Or other than that, here's to hoping your product better cost $200,000 or more.
What do you think customers maybe underestimate when it comes to these robotics and then the design, engineering, deployment? Are there any expectations that they have that just aren't realistic or that they just underestimate?
I think on a high level, the first misunderstanding that they don't realize how much the services around it cost. So they go somewhere and someone's like, robot, $30,000, last 60,000 hours. And some high up is like, oh my God,
Get it?
buildings should be full of these things. And then suddenly they're like, I've spent 12 million now. What the hell happened? We have like 25 robots. What happened? So that's the sort of fundamental problem. Though a lot of people now kind of get worked up. That's why most factories don't have them, because they see the first invoice and they're like, no, thank you.
Mhm.
For smaller, and I've talked with big companies like Corning. Corning is gigantic, right? I think this might be just they were from a single department, so maybe they don't know everything, but they told me they have 26 degree of freedom robots at Corning. 20. That doesn't feel like a lot for a multi-billion-dollar company.
But what is it so other than the deployment and the cost that we kinda talked about the integration, what else is that high cost coming from?
So you need to reprogram it because you change what you're doing.
Oh, it's all the reprogramming.
So you
Okay.
need to bring them in. And then you're like, well, I don't want to bring them in. I want to hire the talent set in. Like, I want to hire the tools. Like, okay, so
Mm.
now you have like $100,000 carry on this person.
So
You
so
hire one of them. Yeah.
the manufacturer or I guess, the reseller? So is RealTime Robotics the actual manufacturer of some of these robots, or are you
No,
servicing
we
those
don't
robots?
we don't build, we don't even service them. We just
Okay.
provide the software solution that can solve them.
Got it.
So
Okay.
essentially our users are the integrators, but our
Mhm.
customers are usually the factories because the
Okay.
integrators are a little ambivalent about the high level problem that we're automating one
Yeah.
of their main offerings. Now they're full of they have more mechanical engineers than Pathfinder. So the mechanical engineers not so bothered by us. We actually help them a lot
Okay.
but this is the issue is that this motion planning, which is like, how
Mhm.
does the robot get there without colliding with stuff, is being so sticky. And you're like, that can't be that hard. Like, I'm not doing complicated things. Like, if I have to touch it from here and here,
Mhm.
come on, man. Okay, so
Yeah.
you start programming it yourself. But the headline is that if the skill is not in your house, you need to explain the problem. They need to come over. A day is suddenly a very, very short time, right? And a day of someone with a rare technical skill set, including travel, is not going to be cheap. Okay, so you're like, well, okay, I do this a bunch. Let's bring it in house. All right, well, you don't get any economies of scale on those tools. So
Mhm.
you end up now with a high end CAD, high end sim tool. Just like, oh, Jesus, now I'm paying 1,000 and I'm paying quite a bit. Like, I have a $200,000 carry here. And
Mhm.
the other problem is that I brought it because I hated that I had 4 reprogrammers in a row that cost me an arm and a leg. But now I have this product selling like hotcakes. I don't really need to do anything right now.
Mhm.
So they have this massive retention problem because now this person you just hired in is just doing nothing. And while it's nice getting a check while not doing very much, it's not super fulfilling. So
No.
I've heard rumor at least like people who just like you have a team of one. It's also not the most social role when you're a team of one who's
Yeah.
essentially an insurance policy. They just don't stick around very well. And
Yeah.
I totally understand it. I would not stick around either.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hard problem to solve. Again, unless you have enormous scale, in which case, yes, it kind of starts solving itself. Like, yeah, you can, if you're Tesla or Ford, sure, you could just get a bunch of them and now they're a thing. And you have enough factories that Lord knows they're not going to have 6 months of nothing to do. That's not a problem. They're not going to have 6 minutes of nothing to do. It makes a little more sense for them. But again, the medium size, it's just the economics start looking really, really terrible. Like, yes, the integrators suck because you have to pay them to travel in, but having this resource who will probably quit on you at some point because you're going to have
Mhm.
a dry spell, neither of those sounds really good.
Yeah.
And a lot of manufacturing also is not where these robot programmers are, by the way. So imagine the challenge where you're in Idaho and you have a factory and you're just dying because the integrators also have to travel in.
Yeah.
Everyone's traveling in, or you have to lure someone from. Most of these are actually, the skill set is actually most common in Detroit still, even though you're
Mhm.
like, oh, robot programming, surely that's a Boston and San Francisco thing. It's like, no, industrial ones, Detroit is number
Yeah.
one. It's just there's no real easy solution, especially because one of the cool things about smaller factories is they are actually one of the few things that are still distributed quite nicely around the whole country, which I think is a good thing. But in this case, this is the sort of thing that drives everyone towards centralization. And we're hoping to help break that. If it just becomes a thing software can do for you,
Mhm.
you don't need to chase this rare skill set all over, to the ends of the earth. It becomes quite simple. You just need someone who knows CAD who can tell it like, hey, I want it to do this thing here and this thing here and then here and then bring this part and put some glue and then do this thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And go to the cloud and we're like, yep, watch the
Yeah.
first run. So it's super fascinating as a sort of industry to be in because I think we did quite a lot of damage to everything by doing that K shape with our manufacturing.
Mhm.
And it sure would be nice if we could undo some of that.
I think it's so interesting that the physical automation piece of things still depends so heavily on digital readiness. So, how does your customer know when they want to purchase this robot to do this thing? How do they know when the digital readiness is caught up to what they want their robot to do?
So again, like they're not buying robots for us, though we're working with robot. We'd like to work with the robot OEMs because they're also looking for ways. We're selling so much fewer robots than we need to be selling in this world. So there's like 600,000 6-degree arms sold last year. This sounds like a lot. It's not. Korea is going to lose about 500,000 people from their workforce per year for the next 50 years. China in I think 2033 is going to peak and they're going to lose about 14 million people from their workforce in a single year. Like this is baked in. Like this is like comparing the cadre of 8-year-olds to the cadre of 55-year-olds. Like if people at
Mm.
65 retire, that's simple math. You're like, oh, well, the 30 million 55-year-olds are going to be out, then they're going to be replaced
Mhm.
by 17 million. Uh-oh, you need a lot more. And I think the pressure is just going to build. And it's essentially up to marketing to keep people informed. Like they might
Mhm.
have looked into it and said, wow, the ROI in this thing sucks really bad. Someone needs to make sure that the communication reaches them. It's like, hey, the world has shifted a little. You might want to take a look again. And there's this slightly utopian Californian thinking is like, what if we made this thing that could do everything? Like a
Mm.
humanoid robot, and it'll be so cool. I'm sure it would be. Not a big believer. Also, because some of the things I hear is like the most harebrained, where it's like the humanoid robot could drive a car or fly a helicopter. It's like, my God, those have computers. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a moonshot way of solving it, is like, look, what if it
Mhm.
could just learn everything and be as smart as a human? Okay, that will create that would create a huge number of different problems. Good thing it's not going to happen anytime too soon.
Mhm.
They might be useful for some things, but the whole idea about factories has always been is that you can control your environment. Same is for big logistical hubs too. They're built, they're purpose built. In which case, why use a form function that's unnecessarily generalist?
Mhm.
So, but these are kind of, but they're chasing the same problem as we are. Like, I get it. The problem is robots are really impractical to deploy right now, and it's all to do with economics of it all.
Mhm.
And I hope we are not alone in this. There's other companies sort of surrounding this manufacturing space. Logistics is already actually really good in the US because that's the one thing we couldn't outsource, right?
Mhm.
So like I'll take Amazon over Alibaba any day of the week. I'm not
Yeah.
so sure I'll take Ford over Xiaomi
Yeah.
because we kind of like interesting moving between the two spaces. The attitude to robotics shifts back by quite a while just because there's just not that many companies in the space that are true market leaders.
Yeah. Where do you think AI is genuinely changing operations, and where do you think the market may be ahead of itself?
In this, where AI is really changing things in the robotics or in general, which ones are robotics or more generally?
In robotics and
In
the
robotics,
software that you're running?
it's not doing very much at all yet. I have not seen anything. Well, again, this depends. Like, we're so quick to like take things that are like magical and then we're like,
Mhm.
well, it works. That's not AI. Like, LLMs are kind of graduating to being not AI soon. Vision is everywhere. Computer vision, recognizing, and that is basically neural networks. That's
Mhm.
changing. Truck unloading wouldn't work with it. Palletizing wouldn't work without it. All of that is working off AI, and it's the norm now. You can't work without it.
Mhm.
Like, every truck unloader, every pick and placer, you go to an Amazon warehouse, it's completely stocked full of AI. It's just kind of boring AI,
Mhm.
or it's about as exciting as, Siri recognizing what you say.
Yeah.
When it came out, it felt really artificial
Yeah.
intelligence. Now it just says something stupid to you, and you're like, this is artificial
Right.
dumbness. Humans are really good at getting used to what we have.
Mhm.
So the question really is AI everywhere, really high profit margin, borderline mandatory.
Mhm.
I guess the LLMs, not really that clear yet where those are benefiting. There's all these attempts to do a little bit of timeline thing here, but the LLMs and motion planning attempts. The problem is that they just reach a couple of nines, and with something hardware, and because we don't have people are playing around with the idea of coming up with skin. Like, I first of all, I can't hurt this, but I also have a little bit of flex in me, so like I don't
Yeah.
immediately hurt myself either. Robots are
Yeah.
not like that. This move, and it's going through this, unless it's rock, in which case it's going to break a joint or something.
Mhm.
Very unforgiving. So there's people who are trying to do like skin and things that make it more forgiving, and others are trying to like make it 100%. We're in the 100% camp. And the problem is that the AI stuff is just adding nines, but the problem is still catastrophic when it happens. So
If
that,
you
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, if you could snap your fingers and fix one persistent problem in either in your business or with your customers or in the entire kind of workflow of, the industrial automation deployment area, what would it be?
That's a tough one. Right now, highly temporarily, all the IT approvals would be my favorite, but
Yeah.
I'm talking from very recency bias and immediate pain.
But I'm curious about that. What do you mean? Where do those approvals come into the flow?
Because particularly manufacturing has logistics is much better about it, but manufacturing is quite sort of rigid and doesn't
Mhm.
so the IT approvals can be very, very painful to get because they're not used to moving quickly. So I would say this is the big thing. Like, if I could snap my fingers, and this is a very complicated thing to change,
Mhm.
is it's just like fundamentally manufacturing culture. Like, we have this whole missing middle where no one's doing it, and sort of then we have the top level, which has been really static for a really long time because, and now we're protecting with them with tariffs, which is,
Yeah.
they know the writings on the wall, but still, like, that's not like, yeah, we don't need to expose them to $8,000 EVs tomorrow because then they're just going to die.
Mhm.
But the pressure being up there would be great. If I had one favorite thing is like, and maybe Bezos is up to this, is like if someone made a generalist factory, I would love if Amazon went to manufacturing. I think that would be a brilliant idea because it fits them really well. So you're like, oh, I want to do this fulfillment. And Amazon says, yeah, I see you're sourcing from China. We can produce it for 2% less. People might go, I don't really care. Sure, click. If we can help make that sort of thing happen, like having people with those sorts of business ideas, I think would be amazing. But no one's thinking of manufacturing like that. Partially it's because our VenCap model is kind of poorly fitting it, right? It's just, they're just not, the money doesn't flood and it needs to flood a little. Like suddenly like, oh, here's 250,000 seed money. It's like, I don't know what this, like maybe I'll get partial floor plans.
Yeah.
Like it's just not that much of money.
Yeah.
In this context. Hopefully we can reduce the prices, help reduce the prices. So if you want to do a 200 robot plant between the robots and the programmings, hopefully that won't be that much soon. Maybe you can manage that with 10 million or less. That would be really changing things. I mean, you're still going to need the building. You're still going to need someone to design your products, but and just working capital. Like it's just building things eats money for breakfast,
Yeah.
like cash.
Yes. Yes,
Because
it
you're like,
does.
I need 10 million in inventory.
Right.
To keep this factory running. It's like, oh, well, you're not getting loans. You don't have sales yet. Like, cough it up.
Yeah.
And that's just the investor appetite. Like pre-money valuation for SpaceX, if it IPOs, is absolutely ridiculous. But on the other hand, I would like people to make a ton of money who invested into hardware because that would encourage people being a little bit more bold. Where you're like, well, shucks, I made $8 billion from my SpaceX investment. I can afford to spend 3 or 4 of that trying things out with factories, and that could really work out. But it's a big wish.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, what is one belief you have about automation now or programming now that you probably didn't have 5 or 10 years ago?
I had no idea that robot programming was a scarce resource. I didn't know that 2 years ago. Everyone I met, like from MIT, knew how to program a robot.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, they're used to the Python coding, but the manufacturing programming is completely different. It's all interlocks and stuff, and you have to work deep with the robots. And like, I did not understand because I'm from the software realm. I'm used to things being really interchangeable, and like if you know how to do it one way, you can kind of do it the other way. No, not at all. I did not know that was actually such a problem, and it took me a while to grasp this. Like, it costs 10 times more to program the robots than it like. Programming is like, there's programmers coming out. Everyone's moaning about AI stealing their jobs. Just make them program the robots. And it does not work that way, unfortunately. I hope it will soon and hope we'll be a part of that change. But I did not realize that it did not work that way at all.
It's wild. Well, Ville, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you being so generous with your time. If anybody listening to this show wants to find you or RealTime Robotics, where should they go?
I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. There's the joys of a Finnish name. It's not a huge stack to filter through. RealTime Robotics is at rtr.ai, and there's a good contact us form. And if you're doing anything with robots, we can really help you quite a bit. And looking forward to hearing from anyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.